Okay, welcome. So, today we're going to look at the causes of unemployment. Now, first of all, we've got some different ones. They're down this side, okay? The first one, number one, frictional. Now, most economists do not consider this to be a major problem, okay? So, when you finish a job, you may then have a period of time where you are in a transition, effectively. You're between jobs, it's often called. One job is finished, the next job's not started yet. It might be that you've lost your job or you've been made unemployed and you're in the process of seeking another one. Or you may even have finished one contract, but your next contract doesn't start for a period of time. Okay, this is frictional. Okay, it can vary. So sometimes you might be unemployed for a few weeks, sometimes you might be unemployed for a few months. Worst case scenario, it stretches out during maybe several months. But that's not an ideal scenario, but it's not a major problem for an economy. Okay, so of course you want to reduce the amount of frictional unemployment. You make it as smooth as possible for people to go from one job to another. Okay, but there's nothing really serious about that type of unemployment in your economy. Second, seasonal unemployment. Now, obviously, certain industries are more active during the summer, certain industries are more active during the winter. The obvious examples are beach resorts, places like Marbella on the south coast of Spain, or places like, somewhere in the Alps for the skiing season, or somewhere in California for the surfing season. You've got to think about places or businesses that have many customers only during certain times of the year. Okay, it could even be products that are really in high demand at certain times of the year, but not in others. So, for example, let's think about the amount of chocolate that is sold during Christmas, or the amount of ice cream that is sold during the summer holidays. It's things like that where you've got to think, okay, so certain times of the year there'll be high demand for workers in those industries, and certain times in the year where there will be a reduction in the demand for workers in those industries. Okay, so think about that in terms of seasonal unemployment. If you're working in an industry where there is seasonal demand, if you're working in an industry where certain times of the year you will be expected to work many hours and be really busy, and other times of the year where you won't be busy at all. Okay, this is seasonal unemployment. Next, the big one. The one that really affects economies the most, and it is the most difficult to get rid of. It is the most insidious in terms of people's lifestyles, people's standards of living, and this is structural unemployment. We see that when you move from a pre-industrial nation to an industrial nation to a post-industrial nation to a knowledge-based economy, you've got changes in the structure of your economy. You've got primary sector, tertiary sector, secondary sector, quaternary sector, all of those jobs that are mixed together. When you have structural changes in those economies, you get less primary jobs, you get more secondary jobs, then you get less secondary jobs, you get more tertiary jobs, then you get less tertiary jobs, you get more quaternary jobs. So we're moving in a way as economies become more developed that certain industries collapse and other industries grow. So, for example, if you're working in the steel industry, you've got a factory with 1,000 people working in it, and all of a sudden you get that industry starts to fall apart. It might move abroad, or there might be a cheaper system of doing things. So actually, you don't need the workers anymore. And those workers that are semi-skilled, that are taught to do one particular trade, they are going to find it difficult to replace that job and go into another industry. Okay, so it's really difficult to get rid of structural unemployment. It's one of the worst things that can happen in an economy when you get entire industries that start to collapse. Next, cyclical unemployment. Now, you should be aware that you measure an economy, the size of an economy, using gross domestic product. But forget gross domestic product, the total value of goods and services produced in an economy in a given period of time, normally a year. And you can see that this is our actual GDP figure here. Okay, this is our trend line. Okay, and using this we can identify certain things. What's called an output gap, a negative output gap. Here, negative output gap. Okay, we've got two obvious negative output gaps there. What happens during that period? Well, you can see the economy is shrinking. It's actually getting smaller. And what that means is that there's less production, less manufacturing, less demand for goods and services. And what that means is that has a direct knock-on effect on how many people in the workforce will be needed to produce those goods and services. So this cyclical unemployment is based on how well your economy is doing. When you go into recession, 2 consecutive periods, 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, then you start to see less and less companies employing people, or companies that shrink, companies that go out of business. You get less startups. If you've got a situation where the economy is booming, where GDP is growing quickly, then you might find that businesses are expanding, new businesses are being created, and there's more jobs available. So don't forget, at times of recession, you're going to get greater cyclical unemployment. At times of growth, economic boom, you're going to get a greater number of people employed. So this is what we call cyclical unemployment. Next, real wage unemployment. Now, real wage unemployment, or what's called classic unemployment, can actually be it's really tricky to try and understand this one. It's about wage levels in the economy. Okay, so if workers are willing and able to work at a certain price level, so a certain wage level, then employers may choose to employ them. But governments often step in and set a minimum wage. So, for example, in Spain at the moment, minimum wage is about 1,050 euros a month, gross. And if there's somebody who's willing and able to work below that level, they won't be employed. They won't be employed because the government have placed a minimum wage on that. And therefore, I'll show you using a diagram. So here we've got a basic concept of supply of labour, demand for labour. If people are willing to work at this level, then this would be the wage equilibrium. This would be the number of workers. That's the quantity of workers right there. Okay, but the government steps in and says, hang on a second, we want to have a minimum wage. We do not want people to be working for a wage that's below that level. And this does two things. It means that more people are willing and able to work, Q1 for example, and less businesses are willing and able to employ those workers over here. And the difference is unemployment. Okay, now how are we going to do that? What are we going to do about that? Well, there's not much you can do. What you can do is you can try and boost the demand for labour, or you can try and restrict the supply of labour. But both of those things are unlikely to happen in a short period of time. So it's quite difficult to actually rectify this idea of real wage unemployment. The idea is that these wages are sticky down. People will not be able to reduce those wages to actually get rid of this unemployment. Mainly because the government stepped in with minimum wage. Okay, but also people might be unwilling to work at a lower wage level than they're currently working. So you've got this idea of sticky down wages. Okay, and that's the last type of unemployment there, real wage unemployment. Okay, that's just it for today. I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.